Here we are. Welcome to episode 3.
Yeah, hey there.
Welcome to A Dash of Salt, where two salty women sprinkle a little flavor into your everyday journey through work, play, a little bit of playfulness, some personal growth thrown in there.
Yep.
I am Stacy McCracken, your co-host, a small town girl from the Midwest, from a place called Peru, Indiana. It's a real place. And now I live in Austin, Texas, and Austin, Texas is home.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm Sharon Mawet, your salty companion. I am a native Texan. Yeah, with a knack for baking up big dreams.
Yeah. We are together again to infuse a little saltiness into your world.
Absolutely. Whether it's spicing up your career or seasoning your personal growth, we have got you covered. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Yeah, if this is your first time joining us, thank you for tuning in. And we can't wait to share today's episode with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today's episode. Sharon, it's weekly spark time. I think you are doing the weekly spark today.
I know. Well, I'm enjoying listening to other podcasts as well and get my little spark from, but I listen to the Mel Robbins podcast. And she said one of the best things you can do for yourself or for relationships that you have is to love yourself. Taking the time to discover who your authentic self is really does wonders for boosting your self-esteem, which in turn builds more positive relationships. So the weekly spark is she recommended starting each and every day. Start your very first thing in your morning by looking yourself in the mirror, right? And tell yourself something positive, but more importantly, she said, give yourself a high five in the mirror.
I love that. That. Mel, you're doing great stuff. I love how you inspire people. Right. So thank you so much. I love that idea. And it might feel a little weird, but I guess you just get over it, right?
It does feel weird, but that is the point. As you do it repetitively, there's just small action to say, I'm going to have a great day. High five yourself in the mirror, or you say you're beautiful and high five yourself in the mirror, or say something positive and really give yourself a boost. She says, amazing how it really changes your mental game.
It does, right? Mindset is such a big part of just quality of life, right? The Absolutely. Mindset that you enter into the day with. I know we started the day out with a walk this morning, right? We went for a walk in the sunshine and in, just to try to get some of that energy, right? And to rev us up to have a great day today.
Yeah. So Stacy, what are we talking about today?
So we are actually going to focus a little bit on mental health, but really around the aspect of friendships.
Great.
And so I thought it seemed appropriate.
Absolutely.
So, I love that Sharon is in my life and a friend, and I know that it helps my mental health dramatically. If you haven't listened to our intro and our background about our relationship, we worked together for years. And so I know that when either one of us was having a stressful day, just being able to check in with each other and have some place to vent.
I need to vent, Stacy, for 5 minutes, and then I can move on to something more positive. Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And there's actually some science related to that. Allowing yourself, don't say, well, I shouldn't be frustrated or I shouldn't do that. But there's some science that says, give yourself the space to go, okay, I've got 1 minute, I've got 5 minutes to just get this out of my brain and let go of it.
Yeah.
So that I can move on. Right. Otherwise, it just stays in and it just builds on this frustration.
Yeah. There's a popular DJ here in the DFW Metroplex, and I always kept her advice. She says, if you have a disappointment or you have a breakup or whatever, she's like, dwell in the misery, be sad, be upset, be mad, but give yourself a timeline. If you have a bad breakup, I'm going to be sad for a week and then move on. Or, I got bad news today. You know what? And pick your amount of time and then move on. And that tip has done a lot for my mental health game.
I love it. So we're going to focus on on those things, right? Mindset and friendships and how those things can really have such a huge impact on our lives. There's a few statistics that I'm going to make sure I get these right, but this is what inspired me to want to talk about this. So a recent Pew Research study said US adults believe that having close friends is extremely important or very important for living a fulfilling life. It should be no surprise, right? We all think having close relationships is really important.
Right.
But get this, the US Surgeon General found in a study that they did that loneliness is now a public health epidemic.
Yep, believe it.
And according to the report, that loneliness can significantly impact overall health and well-being. So it increases the risk of heart disease by 29%. It increases the risk of stroke by 32%. It increases the risk of dementia by 50%. Can you believe that? 50%. And it increases the risk of premature death by 60%. And they compared that. They said that's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, the increase of loneliness and premature death.
That's scary facts you just presented, Stacy.
And so it's not just about your health, right? So loneliness and isolation impacts your mental health.
Yeah.
Right. It is one of the contributing factors to suicide and depression.
Right.
And it also impacts work productivity.
It does.
Right.
Absolutely.
And, when so many people are working from home now, that level of isolation, it isn't that they aren't being productive by working from home, but there's a level of isolation that we have to be mindful of.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And how we prevent those folks from feeling isolated and not having friendships and community and things like that. Those are the facts. And
all right, so how are we gonna?
Well, I think let's talk about this virtual or in person, right? Because there's, if you've read the news lately, right, there's this huge push, right, to get people
back into the office.
Get people back to the office.
Yeah.
And part of it, people say it is productivity related. I also think it's this isolation. We know when we're together and we can share ideas kind of on the fly,
yeah,
you can be more creative, you
right,
can be more innovative.
Yeah.
And also, more what's going on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this sort of hybrid thing has been difficult for companies to manage, I think, because if you don't have regular days that people are in the office, then I think it's possible for someone to show up and nobody be there.
Yes, I have heard that.
And so that's a problem.
Right.
Right. And so, I don't think, personally, I'm a fan of hybrid. I enjoy working from home.
Yeah.
But I also recognize how isolating it is. You work from home.
I do. I switched from having an in-person job to this last year being completely remote. And now half of my team is in person on our main campus. But the other half are all remote, living around various cities. And so I have struggled as a leader and as a manager to say, how can I find a way to connect people through this hybrid model that we're now running in our organization? So it's been a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And, my husband works in a tech company and he works for, he has a local team, but then he also works with people around the world, right?
Yeah.
And so they're always virtual, but the leadership team works hard to come together in person. And I love that about his bosses, that he values that power of, even though it's expensive to bring people from around the world together,
yeah,
there's a power in bringing people together in community, even if you're virtual all the other times, right? Just having those moments of togetherness.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed, and you'll have to tell me if you've noticed this, people treat each other different in person than they do if they're always remote. So from a work standpoint, right? Like someone may send an email if they don't think they're going to see you, and deliver it in such a way that they would never say those things like if you were face to face
Yes.
having a conversation like you and I are,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I've seen in my own organization, the people that are on remote are used to popping into somebody's office and having a quick question or chatting about, something about their day personally. But their transition to modeling that same behavior through Teams chat group or pinging you virtually, they felt like we have to have a scheduled meeting. And I'm like, no, like pick up the phone. So in my team that's remote, adapted to the virtual form of communication very quickly because it was necessary to have a coffee chat. But how can we replicate that virtually? And getting the two to pick up similar habits has been a challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's about building trust, right?
Yeah.
That this is this is important enough that this is how we have a chat. And we used to do that really well when we worked together.
Yes.
Together but remotely, right? In different cities.
Yes.
That way of just leveraging chat in such a way that it wasn't disruptive to our day,
right?
But it was, hey, happy Friday.
Right.
Like we have had a hard week.
That's
like
right.
Well done us.
Right.
For getting through it, right?
That's right.
And so it was our own form of morning high five, right?
Yeah,
our own form of morning high five in the mirror. I think that idea of jumping to the wrong conclusions or finding it as an excuse not to communicate with people can really then create this feeling of isolation. And then it can linger, right, to break down friendships and relationships and things like that, right? If you aren't communicating well. So friendship also can change the body and the brain. Yeah. And so we talked a little bit about that earlier, but I think one of the biggest reasons that connections, and we talked about building connections and networking in episode 1. So go check that out if you haven't checked out episode 1. But this is so, it's such an inherently important part of not just work, but also life. I love this quote. In the face of life's challenges, having a close friend to turn to seems to be a buffer or a protective factor against some of the negative outcomes we might otherwise see. I love that quote. What comes to mind when you hear that?
Well, I think about our own friendship, right? We approach problems from a different lens and a different perspective, right? And so I may, as I'm talking to you or other friends that I have that have different perspectives, and I'm just like, woe is me, this problem is enormous. And you're like, your friend is like, no, it's not, just go about it this way. Or have you thought about it from this perspective? And I'll be like, oh yeah, right. Like maybe it's not as a big of an issue as it originally feels when you're isolated and ruminating over it for, days or hours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And, I think that friendships also protect us in how we respond to stress. Blood pressure is lowered. So these are all things that have come up in research, right? Your blood pressure is lowered when you talk to people who are supportive. Yes. You and I both can attest to that. Like, I know my blood pressure drops if I'm frustrated and I can just have a quick conversation with you or with another friend that it just, even my husband, right? I can come home and vent a little and I feel better. And hopefully he's not too like, oh my gosh.
Yes. I've learned over time, I'm a verbalizer. I can get past a mountain if I can actually verbalize it to someone who will listen. And then it either makes my solution much clearer or that stress just releases and I can move about and go on with my day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a lifelong friend who I have spent a lot of time building relationship with. And so I met her. She lived across the hall from me when we were freshmen in college.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I have worked hard. We talk about intentionality with networking. We have been super intentional about how we maintain our relationship and our friendship because we haven't lived in the same city since we were in college together.
Yeah.
And so we will plan a girls' weekend. We will, try once a year and every 2 years if possible. She actually gave me this. This is why I brought it today.
Oh, nice.
So, we talk about things you do for stress relief. And we used to sit down in college if we were having a particularly bad week. We were engineering students. And so We weren't out having a lot of big fun like people who weren't engineering students.
Yes.
and so if we were having a bad time, we would come home and we would put on the mini adventures of Winnie the Pooh, because when we were growing up, we both watched Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
And the mini adventures of Winnie the Pooh had 3 stories. It had Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree,
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger Too. And we would sit down and we would watch all 3 of those together.
Right.
And we would laugh. And it was just like magic.
Yeah.
Like it just sort of released our day. And so I think that actually ties back into hobbies, right? Friendships and hobbies, right? Something to release your stress. So one birthday, she sent this to me. And it is Winnie the Pooh and Piglet. And it says, "As soon as I saw you, I knew an adventure was going to happen."
There you go.
And anyway, friendships are important. And you and I have worked hard to stay connected. And we are actually going to go see a friend soon and have our own girls' weekend.
That's right.
So yeah, so friendship takes time, it takes effort, but it is so important. I do want to talk a little bit about, as we get older, it says that our ring of friends gets smaller.
Yeah.
Right? We have fewer and fewer like really close, good friends. And that's normal. Like that's a normal just part of life.
Yeah. Then
you think, well, why can't I connect with people in that same way anymore?
Right.
But there's actually also good research and science that acquaintances in real life are just as important to overcoming isolation and that feeling of loneliness and things like that. I talk to strangers. You know this about me. I talk to strangers. I am infinitely curious about people. And so we can be sharing an Uber ride somewhere. And
yeah, she gets busy talking to them and finds out their entire life story before we reach our destination. Yeah. I would not do that, but yes.
But it's about just being curious. And
exactly.
So even just saying hello to the checkout clerk, right? Yeah. When you're, I use self-checkout a lot, but.
Yeah, but paying attention to who you encounter throughout the day. Can you offer them a smile? Can you, pick up something they dropped off the floor, right? And noticing people. I do realize I've been trying to make an effort to do that. It makes a positive impact on your mental health, right?
It does. That one of the ways to strengthen connections and friendships, I would suggest you check out our networking episode, because we do talk about some really great ideas for doing that. And we actually have an upcoming episode where we're going to talk about furry friends.
There you go.
And I have kind of a great example of, you don't necessarily have to have a dog to use that to build relationships, but just a way of this sort of informal gathering of people people really can go from acquaintances to friends.
Right.
But I have a whole group of folks now that I could ask a question to that didn't exist before. And they're not all really close friends. Right.
Yeah. Because a lot of you're not going to sit here and talk to me about what, cake decorating tip size will be the best one to use to ice a cupcake. You might, appease me for a bit, but you'd probably rather talk about a book if you want. So, having those acquaintances in certain niches is beneficial and can really satisfy both parties in that relationship.
Yep. And it makes a huge difference in your mental health and your overall well-being. It's being intentional, right, about how you do that. I would also suggest, if you are an introvert or you think, okay, I can't do any of these things, maybe a meetup. If you graduated from college, I would suggest looking for a local alumni group in your area. And that's a great way to start, from just finding folks where you have something in common.
Right.
But meetup is a great place for looking for interests. Right. And so I actually had someone in Austin who's part of our alumni group say that there's a group for over 50s. And so she said there's some married people, there's single people, but they get together once a month and either do a movie night or have a cookout or things like that. And just really trying to break through that feeling isolated.
Right.
Right.
Or there's around here, I took up walking, trying to do a Komen 3-day walk. And there's tons of walking groups that get together and they just, hang out. Or, pickleball is the craze of the day. They have open play, just getting out there and meeting new people, and figuring out. So it doesn't have to be organized. You can't just show up and meet people and have an interesting conversation for the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If anyone is feeling isolated or lonely or depressed, we're going to attach some resources below this episode of things for you to go check out. But I also just encourage you to reach out, reach out to someone reach out and just try not to prolong that isolation.
Right. I do try to make it a habit of every week or daily, but at least once a week, reach out to a friend or an acquaintance that I haven't spoken to a while. Just say, hey, thinking about you, or ask them how, I don't know, the kids are doing, or, just how they're doing in life.
Right.
Or, I try to, once a week, maybe meet somebody for coffee, or, try to meet with them virtually if I'm not in an organized activity that week.
I think that's a great idea. I love those tips. We've talked about a lot of things today. I hope that we've covered something that will be helpful to you. And if nothing else, Sharon, do you think I've convinced people that community and relationships and friendships matter? Like, it's important for your health. It's important for everything. Do you think that
Absolutely. I think I have certainly struggled with loneliness as, I've moved in this empty nest phase and moved to a new neighborhood. And it takes time, it takes effort to get out of that loneliness trap. So start, as we keep talking about, start small, join, look up a meetup to go to, text a friend, even if they're not in the area. Make a phone call, join a Bible study, make small steps, and then you'll get out of that slump.
I love that.
Sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you have something cooking up in the kitchen for us today?
I do, of course. Since you have a love for books, I want to recommend 2 books about developing
excellent
relationships. So 2 great books that I think are good resources for making friends or building connection include, of course, The Timeless How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's been out for quite a while now. But the other one, from a professional aspect, is popular, Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. So, true to your thoughts, Stacy, Dale Carnegie books emphasizes the importance of showing interest in somebody else's life. So even if you think you can't find somebody that likes reading books, so you can't find a book club to join, talk to your neighbor, ask them, what do they do for a hobby, or how do they get out, or just ask them about their life. So a great question to ask is, what are you most passionate about right now? So hopefully that'll help some people out there. And then in Never Eat Alone by Keith, he emphasizes the importance of building relationships rather than waiting until you need help. So rather than wait till you get lonely, developing the habit of building relationships like you do, and asking the Uber driver about their day, or the farmer's market booth owner, wait and build those relationships before you need them.
And that's a great point, because so often, and especially with the economy shifting, and as layoffs happen, and as people are looking to transition jobs, maybe they're in a bad work situation and want to find a new role or a new something to do. That is so important, right? A lot of career transition coaches will say, reach out to your network, leverage your network. And if you haven't been communicating with your network, then it becomes a little tricky, right? It feels awkward. It feels awkward. Not that anybody would not choose to help you if they know you. And that's more about us and how we feel. But, I used my network actually to help launch some of my research. And it reminded me that there were people in there that I had not reached out to in a long time.
Right.
And that, I made a note that I've got to work on that. Like I've got to make a more intentional effort to stay connected with these folks because they're important to me. And I enjoyed working with them, and I enjoyed where I met them, and so I have to be more intentional.
So I think we need to challenge each other this week, right? Let's open up our Rolodex, and we challenge you to join us. Open up your Rolodex, find a friend you haven't talked to or an acquaintance that you haven't talked to in a while, and send them a text or try to meet them for coffee.
I love that. Challenge accepted.
There you go.
Challenge for you too.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. Episode on a Dash of Salt. I'm Sharon Mawet, along with my good friend Stacy McCracken. Remembering to keep seasoning your life with purpose, passion, and a pinch of playfulness.
You did that really well. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and keep tuning in for more tips, tricks, ideas, hacks, a little saltiness in your day. So we can't wait till we see you next time. Check out twosaltywomen.com for more content and more insights.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See you next time.